Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our conference, to our home garden conference today. I'm coming to you here from the Netherlands, and the rest of our speakers, they'll all be joining us from the UK. So, just to remind you, if you have a question, you're allowed to put a question. You have to raise your hand. Most of us have on the Zoom on the reaction button. So if you'd like to raise a question, you have to go to the reactions and push the raise your hand button. And then when you come into the program, then you have to unmute yourself so that we can hear the question. So why are we here? Why are we online? Well, of course, we were planning last year and this year to hold our conference in the UK. But travel restrictions, COVID, have unfortunately not allowed us to do so. So we decided, well, what we would do is take the main elements of our conference and bring them to you online. So that's what we've done today. We've got some interesting films for you. We've got a very interesting speaker, Dave Goulson. And I'm going to hand over now straight away to Simon Crawford, who is the chair of our business unit, Home Gardening. And he is going to introduce the programme, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about what our Home Garden Association has been doing recently. So, Simon, over to you in the UK.
Thank you very much, Sally. We'll just share this screen now. And hopefully we will have this in full screen shortly. Okay, hopefully that's all in order. Welcome everyone. It's not quite what we envisaged, but we're dealing with the situation we're in as best we can, and I think we've still got a very good programme. So Sally's introduced. I'm going to give a brief report on the Plant of the Year campaign shortly, and to give a little bit of heads up on what lies ahead. We're going to have a film report from the trials and the demonstrations at Eger Park in Germany. Then Fothergills will make an introduction of their company, and there's a film of their trial gardens. And then our keynote speech is going to come from Professor Dave Goulson, The Garden Jungle. And then there's going to be a film of the calendula trial, which was and is being held at the RHS Garden Hyde Hall. And Peter Seabrook will be hosting that. And hopefully we will close at about 1600 Central European time, 1500 British summertime. Well, it seems a while since we were in Switzerland at Vissamen. So thanks again to the heroes at Vis. It was a wonderful time. We've not been together for a while, but let's hope that next year will bring better conditions. A Plant of the Year. Last year, we had a celebration of Rudbeckia. I think it was a huge success. We didn't get out into other parts of Europe to see the trials, but I know from what I've been told that elsewhere across Europe, in Ireland, in Germany, in France, there was a great success with this trial. And also the trial at Hyde Hall that was run by Peter and Molly was absolutely fantastic. It was a huge success and really demonstrated the potential of Rudbeckia as a genus, and some fantastic examples of good new cultivars, both from seed and from cuttings. And the cucumber was also celebrated. It perhaps didn't get as much coverage as we would have liked, but it was still an opportunity to promote cucumber to home gardeners. And these are our partner gardeners, partner gardens: Eger Park, Harlow-Carr, the Jardin des Plantes in Paris, Mainau Island in Germany, RHS Hyde Hall, and the research gardens, agricultural research gardens in Dublin. These are some more details of what the trials look like. Some really nice plantings in Mainau and some lovely mixed plantings in the Jardin des Plantes. We got a lot of press coverage across Europe for this trial. So it was, I think, a huge success. Press releases were put out by the team. Anne Yennen, mainly responsible for that at the Fleuroselect office. And press reviews, various press reviews. And a lot of social media coverage. There's a nice one there of Peter in amongst the glory of Rudbeckia at Hyde Hall. So 2021 is the year of happened, happening now, with trials around Europe. And again, I think it's going to be a huge success. It's also the year of the courgette, and there are special trials of that at the new Bridgewater Garden, and I'll cover that in a minute. So here's some photos of where we are again in the Irish Republic, Hyde Hall, the Jardin des Plantes and Hollow Car. And these are some of the characters involved. Melanie, thank you very much for all your efforts, and Donald as well. It's fantastic to have your support, and Fleuroselect really appreciates what you do to make it all happen. The courgette trial is being run by the RHS, so thanks to them for the cooperation. It will be assessed for awards of garden merit. And I'm sorry, we didn't actually cover the trial that was run at Rosemore Gardens in the southwest of England, in Devon, because it's now ended, but there was a trial run down there and data was gathered. It's a huge task, and thanks to Debbie Rowe and the team at Bridgewater, and also the curator and his staff for supporting the trial. That's been, again, I think will be a great success. We will have AGM awards published shortly, and hopefully there will be an article in the RHS Garden magazine to cover that. Trade press releases have been going out, so the machine has been turning. Consumer press releases and social media, again, really quite good coverage. With the staffing that we've got, I think we have a remarkable take-up. And also a fantastic display at Burger. There's Melanie again with Anne. Thanks again for that. It looks like a wonderful display. I'm so sorry, disappointed that I couldn't make it down to Erfurt to see that. And then 2022, we're going to have the year of the poppy and of basil. And those two, will be featured very soon. Now we've got the photography and the point of sale support is all ready to go for you. Just contact Fleuroselect office or pick it up off the website. It's up to you to use the materials that were being generated. And then in 2023, we have the year of salvia and sage. Salvia and salvia, if you like. I think it's a great opportunity to focus on salvia. It's a plant that isn't particularly well promoted, and there's an opportunity there for us to do something with it across the whole continent. So that's the end of the introduction. I'm going to now hand back to Sally, and I look forward to speaking to you again shortly after we've been through another few talks and films. Sally, over to you.
So everybody, thank you, Simon, for that introduction. We're just going to now have a little bit of a longer look at Erfurt and the Ager Park. As you know, Erfurt is the city of flowers, and the Ager Park there is one of the main attractions. They were asked to run this year the BUGA, that is the Bundesgartenschau, my best German, which is the federal garden show. And because we've had a lot of contacts over the years with the Ager Park, they've run a gold medal trial for us for many, many years. Well, it's a display really. So Anne got together with Melanie and the team there at the Ager Park, and we devised a show of the gold medal winners, our Fleurostar winners, and also some of the highlights of our plant of the year that we've sent to them over the past 7 or 8 years. And they provided a list. We sent them the seed, we organized the cuttings, and of course they grew the plants for us. And Anne went down there a couple of weeks ago to see how they were doing. We understand they've had thousands and thousands of visitors, and they've all been very impressed with the beds, with the bedding, and it shows how wonderful bedding can be in a public park. So here we go. Let's have a look at the film.
For many, many years, Fleuroselect and the Ager Park have had an excellent working relationship. As one of our display gardens, the Ager Park has been showing our gold medals and Fleurostar winners, and they have been a true source of inspiration for the German consumers throughout the years.
Das Fleuroselect-Beet befindet sich ja fast ganz nah am Haupteingang und man sieht da Menschentrauben stehen, voller Begeisterung mit Handy oder noch Fotoapparat, werden Blüten fotografiert und wir schauen da immer in strahlende Gesichter, weil die Begeisterung für die Präsentation so groß ist.
Wir zeigen nicht nur die Pflanze des Jahres, die Ringelblume in diesem Jahr, sondern auch einen Rückblick auf die letzten Pflanzen des Jahres, zum Beispiel die Tagetes, die Rudbeckie.
Auch in diesem Jahr sind sehr viele ausgefallene Sachen dabei, ob das die Sonnenblumen sind, ob das bei den Zinien oder bei den Kosmenen sind, umwerfend.
When we found out that Buga was coming to Erfurt in 2021, Jürgen, Melanie and I, we put our heads together and we thought now really is the time to celebrate our excellent cooperation, and we have to up our game. We have to do something really, really special. So we thought, let's make a giant flower bed.
Es hat richtig Früchte oder Blumen getragen, muss man ja eher sagen, weil das Gemüsesortiment haben wir nicht, aber die Blumen. Und wir sind auch dieses Jahr wieder total begeistert.
When we started our Plant of the Year promotions, we thought that the Ager Park would be a logical partner to work with in northern Germany. And so in addition to our gold medal and Fleurostar trials, they have started to show annual promotion trials for the Plant of the Year.
Also als ich an die Pflanze des Jahres Calendula gedacht habe, habe ich nur über orange und gelbe Blüten nachgedacht und war dann ganz überrascht, was für eine Vielfalt es eigentlich auf dem Markt gibt. Gerade die Sorte Ivory Princess finde ich richtig schön mit diesem Cremegelb, Vanillegelb, ganz toll, auch mit dieser rötlichen Mitte, und wenn man auf die Details schaut, genau die Blütenspitzen sind auch noch mal rötlich verfärbt. Das ist wirklich was ganz Spezielles. Und auch allgemein diese Sortenvielfalt, die es gibt, mit gefüllten Blüten, mit ganz flachen Sorten, die bis zu 50 cm hoch werden. Das ist wirklich verrückt. Also da denkt man überhaupt nicht dran. Man kennt sonst immer nur die Ringelblume von Cremes oder irgendwelchen Tinkturen. Und wie schön die Pflanze eigentlich auch sein kann, ist echt ein Highlight.
Das sind nun mal die besten Pflanzen von der ganzen Welt. Und es gibt ja nur wenige Objekte oder Parks, die das Sortiment zeigen. Also haben wir hier ein Highlight, was eigentlich in Deutschland einmalig ist.
wir wollen immer ganz aktuell sein und vorne dran und immer das Neueste zeigen. Und mit mehr als 500.000 Besuchern in normalen Jahren und jetzt zur Buga mit auf jeden Fall über 1 Million Besuchern sind wir natürlich eine gute Plattform für Fleuroselect, um die neuen Züchtungen zu präsentieren.
This flower bed for me really represents many, many years of ornamental plant breeding. It has been and still will be admired by millions of consumers and visitors here in the park this summer. I think it's a major achievement of all of us together. On the one hand, the Fleuroselect membership who have offered their flowers, and on the other hand, the excellent gardening team here at the EGA Park. And I think it's something we can be super proud of.
Well, everybody, I really hope you enjoyed that film from Germany. I thought it was absolutely magnificent. And you can see the enthusiasm which with the staff there at the EGA Park have supported us and worked together with us as partners on this beautiful display that they had this year. Now we're on to our next part of our programme. And for that, we are going over to Mr. Fothergill Seeds. Now, Mr. Fothergill Seeds has been a member of Fleuroselect for many, many, many years, and quite recently started running a Fleuroselect full trial for us. That's a trial of our entries in our gold medal and novelty trials each year. And we're particularly delighted to have them because they look at our trials with a very, very sharp and educated look at the consumer focus of our trials. So we are very, very delighted to have them. Now, of course, we would have visited our trial and we'd have visited their trials this year, but that's not possible. So they agreed to support this event today, together with us hosting this conference online. And we're going to see them. We're going to move over there now. They're going to introduce a company film and show us some trials. I was fortunate to visit their trial ground a couple of years ago, and I know how magnificent it is. So it's over to you, Ian and Dave, to show us and talk to us a little bit about what Mr. Fothergill Seeds is about. Over to you two.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, guys.
Great to see everybody, even if it is on a screen. So I'm Ian Cross. I'm head of marketing. I think I was listed as trials manager on a list somewhere, which I'm definitely not. That means I just give the impression I know what I'm doing rather than actually know the technical ins and outs of the trial ground. Dave Carey, I'm sure you've all met before, hopefully, managing director.
Good to see everyone. A real shame that we're unable to host, because we've been working hard towards this, and credit to Sally and the gang for pulling this all together remotely. Not easy, but it's been smooth so far. So thank you very much.
We've got, as Sally suggested, a couple of films. Would have loved to have been walking around the trial site showing you everything in detail. Unfortunately, we can't do that for all the reasons we know about. And it means we've got a little less time to show you around. So we've got two videos, slightly different. The first one that you're going to see just now is actually our company video. So fairly short, just a few minutes long. That will just give you a very brief overview, a little bit of history of the company, and then a very quick whistle-stop tour around our factory, and including an overview of our trial site, which we'll come back to. Have a little bit more of a chat, and we'll just talk a little bit more about the trial site this year, and then a slightly longer video just taking you around just to see what's going on this year. So this first video is just a little overview of the company. I hope you enjoy that one.
Mr. Fothergill started life as a tiny seed of an idea by Jeff Fothergill and Brian Carey from a stable block in a small village near Newmarket. They expanded quickly and to this day remain close to where it all began. Acquiring long-established brand names, we continue to expand sales internationally. In 2016, the running of the business was fully taken on by the sons of Jeff and Brian. They are building on their father's legacy and core reason for being, to enable gardeners to achieve their vision and make growing easy. From nurturing a few simple pots of fresh herbs or veg, to a prize-winning garden in full bloom, bursting with wildlife. All made possible through arguably the widest choice of high-quality flower and vegetable seed varieties gardeners love and trust. Mr. Fothergill's has 4 distinct business units: retail sales, direct-to-consumer sales, international sales, and promotional sales. Offering 3 retail seed brands to our wide and varied retail customers: Mr. Fothergill's, Johnson's, and Country Value. From small shops and independent garden centres to large DIY gardening and grocery multiples. Whatever size and type of retail business, we know how to make your seed sales the best they can be. Our growth over the years has not devalued our founding values: service, quality, choice, and innovation. They remain central to everything we do. We know what it takes to make the most of every season. Our large dedicated sales force is entirely focused on seed sales and backed by a team that has accumulated more knowledge of the seeds industry than any of our competitors. With over 20 specialist seed packing machines that are used to handle 50 million plus packets a year across more than 11,000 SKUs, we have the capacity to scale to over 200 million, meaning we have the flexibility to respond to you and your customers' needs. Quality is of the utmost importance to us. We want you to trust that your customers will get tangible results. To ensure we're the best in our industry, we have an on-site trial ground meticulously testing thousands of varieties of flowers and vegetables every year, and dedicated lab facilities ensuring our seed meets our high germination and purity standards. Gardeners should have the best choice of seeds to meet their needs. With over 2,200 varieties available across our brands and our retail seed ranges alone, no one offers more. Every year we introduce new varieties, working closely with the best breeders from around the world, while also testing new lines on our trial ground. We work with some of the best known organisations and individuals from the world of gardening, bringing specialist seed, themed presentations and ideas to home gardening, as well as raising thousands for charities over the years. So no matter how great or small a space you have, there's always room for retail seed. Trust in us, growing is easy.
There you go. So that's a little company video. Hopefully gives you a bit of a flavour. It shows our site here, Kentford in Suffolk, on the eastern side of the UK. That's actually one that we did a little while ago, really aimed at our retail side of the business. So it leans heavily towards our retail brands, talks less about some of our mail order brands, which you may or may not know, and some other our other business activity, which wasn't mentioned there at all. So, but it just gives you a bit of a flavour of the business, a few sort of flyovers the site here, so you can kind of see where we are. For those that don't know us, we're in a little village just outside Newmarket, on the eastern side of the UK, as I mentioned. So, so that just gives you a bit of a flavour. So the next video that we've got for you is a little bit longer. So that we shot last week, actually. Just to show you where we are, what's happening on the trial site this year, and just to give you a little bit of a background to sort of where we are and what's been happening. Obviously, COVID's been an issue for everybody, and we're the same. It's been a struggle for the last couple of years, but the trial ground has kept going. We ran it last year, even though there was nobody about. And because of the restrictions that were on the go at that particular time, it was pretty much done by one lady, actually, one woman here, who's the now trial site manager, pretty much single-handedly kept that going. And it's not been that much different, actually, this year. So she's had a bit more help coming in this year with our Brian Tolman, who's been doing trial grounds for over 60 years, who unfortunately had to furlough because of his age, has come back and helped her. But really, it's been pretty much the two of them running it. So where we would have had quite a lot of additional help on things like weeding, that's not been available. So there's been all sorts of different struggles again this year, but much to their credit, it has run and it is looking good again. It's been a fairly late year, late in terms of us sowing, getting stuff planted out. It's taken quite a while to get the seed that we wanted to trial, as one of the key reasons. We tend to plant it late anyway, because though it's not a show trial site, it is an entirely working trial site. We do have a press day which we traditionally run every year, and we have members of the press come and visit us in August. So we tend to keep things a little bit later so that everything's kind of compressed together and looking good around about that time. Obviously, certain plants it's not suitable for. So it's quite an unusual pattern of sowing, probably not what you would follow if you were a home gardener, certainly. But this year, things were a little bit later, and we put things in hoping that they would catch up. But of course, the weather's not been on our side. So here on the eastern side of the UK, actually, it's been quite gloomy and cool, despite lots of stories of it being the hottest year on record. It's not arrived in this part of the world. So actually, it's been quite a slow season as well. So we found things like tomatoes particularly have been a long way behind, and a lot of our direct sown hardy annuals and annuals have been quite slow. So actually, when we had our open day with the press a couple of weeks ago, there was quite a lot of the site that was looking quite green, much greener than we would have liked. So we delayed filming until last week so we could capture as much out as possible. Obviously, we'd like to walk around and talk in detail for a long time and show you everything on the site. Not possible because we've only got a short period of time here. So it's a sort of light look at the site, a bit of a visual tour around with some commentary. Hopefully, it will leave you with some idea of what we've got here. It's not a huge area, just under an acre, but we try and pack a lot in there, and it certainly gets well used here and is an integral part of the business. So hopefully you'll enjoy the tour round. If there's anything that you want to ask us about, please do. And please forgive the focus on some of the weeds, which makes me cringe slightly as we get very close into them. As I say, it's a working trial, and unfortunately it's not picked clean of weeds as we'd have maybe liked in normal years. So I hope you enjoy this slightly longer video.
Mr. Fothergill's has been supplying seeds to gardeners and garden retailers for over 40 years. Selling seeds to over 30 countries, we continue to lead the market here in the UK. To ensure our products are the best they can be, we have our very own trial ground to observe and test our many existing varieties and to find new exciting flowers and vegetables for our customers. Set in about an acre of land adjacent to our main headquarters, coupled with 3 polytunnels, this is a working trials ground that's all about testing and understanding the successes and at times the failures of seeds and plants. The trial ground incorporates every kind of growing, from the open soil to here in containers. This year, we have dedicated this area of the trial to growing specifically for Fleuroselect. This is its second year on our trials, with results being recorded and fed back to Fleuroselect. We always combine direct sowing and transplanting. Here we have a transplant selection that has grown on and is now successfully in full bloom. And of course, for late summer colour, no garden is complete without the added vibrancy of the ever-popular dahlia. Tall, small, loud, subtle, there's a flower here to suit everyone's taste. Direct sowing is something most gardeners will do at some point, and that's why we always do it here. Results can be impacted more by the ever-changing weather, but it gives a real understanding of how to achieve the best from sown seeds. Keen to explore new plant and vegetable varieties, Mr. Fothergill's is always looking ahead to what they can bring onto the market. In recent years, wildflowers and flowers to attract wildlife have surged in popularity, giving something for the gardener to enjoy and garden wildlife too. Looking ahead to 2022, Mr. Fothergill's is supporting the Fleuroselect's Year of the Poppy, and here they're looking at the very best. They are easy to grow, and with so many different varieties to choose from, there's something here for every garden. If you ask gardeners what problems they've had this year, blight on tomatoes is sure to be high on the list. And it's no different here, where blight has recently taken hold of most of our outdoor varieties. Nevertheless, we do not use anything that's not readily available to the home gardener. So this is the opportunity to see how varieties are affected and whether the blight-resistant types can live up to their claims. More and more, we're finding that the customer wants value and quick results. Nothing provides this more than the first-year flowering perennials. From achilleas to delphiniums, this area of abundant colour and form has all been grown from seed this year. It's no secret that one positive to come from COVID has been a surge in people taking up gardening. But concern about food security and food miles has also driven up exceptional interest in vegetables and growing your own. So vegetables are also a big part of what we grow here on our trial ground. In our main polytunnel, we are growing 90 varieties of capsicum, from the super hot chilies to large sweet block peppers. Along with these, we have 70 varieties of tomatoes, including all colours and types. We are scoring these for performance, flavour and productivity. Finally, the poppy is not the only plant to be honoured in 2022. It will have to share the podium with basil, which has also been chosen as the badge for the Fleuroselect Year of Promotion. Thank you for watching and hope we have been able to give you a flavour of what we are doing here at Mr. Fothergill's in this short presentation. We look forward to be able to welcome you in person in the future, but until then, we wish you all a successful 2022 season.
So there you have it. Not quite the same as wandering around with the trial book and spending your time looking at individual varieties, but hopefully that gives you a flavour of how it's looking at the moment. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have seen where things are still looking quite green, so cosmos, not many flowers on the direct sown sections of those, and very few flowers, if any, actually on the direct sown sunflowers. So quite a few sort of patches well behind where they would normally be. Some sections of the squash again looking very behind. So quite an interesting year. There's always variations year on year. Over the winter this year, our site flooded, which is very unusual. It's normally a very well drained sandy soil that doesn't get affected by rain. We've had some unusually heavy rain. So it's been challenging different conditions, but it is a working trial, as we said. It's we employ only methods that your home gardener would use, so no sort of weird and wonderful chemicals that nobody can get hold of. The only thing that we do on an industrial scale is the watering, where there's plumbed-in irrigation just because of the size. So we do very much use it as a reference for gardeners, and we feed off that to inform gardeners of what we do, what we find with certain varieties, performance of existing long-established varieties and new ones. So we're looking at all that amongst the various things on that trial site. Always conscious of the fact that we are in a particular part of the UK, which usually doesn't have much rainfall and is usually fairly sunny. So it's interesting to see the different effects. But so hopefully that's given you a good idea of what we've got here. At some time in the future, maybe you'll be able to visit us in person, which would be far better.
No.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. I was very inspired. I saw the word inspiration at the end. I loved the waltzing onions. That was sort of my part that I spotted, but there were some fantastic views of your trials. I know I've been there myself, and they really are very, very interesting. Now is the time, if anybody has a question, that they can put it to our team there at Mr. Fothergill's. And I'm asking our technical people if anybody's raised a hand and would like to ask something. Do we have a person that would like to ask a question? Anybody out there?
You click on
No, they don't all, we don't all jump up and down at once.
Did anyone spot our effective use of face masks?
No, I did. I saw them at the beginning holding up the melons. I saw them, yeah. No?
I think only to second what I was going to say. I think only to second what Ian said earlier. It's a real shame that we haven't been able to host as and when all of us can travel again properly. Then please don't hesitate to get in touch. Both Ian and I are more than happy to give you a private tour around the business and a wander around the trial. Obviously, you've got to be in peak season to get a good look. As you've seen and Ian's described, we're obviously running slightly behind this year. But for goodness me, if you're passing or into Suffolk and passing Newmarket, any of you guys, I've loved touring around your businesses over the years, and it is a real disappointment that we've not been able to show you around personally. So that's an open invitation for me for the future. So,
yeah.
And a real shame that we're not all having a beer together and we're doing this with a glass of water and a squash.
Cup of
and
tea.
Finally, just to say that both Ian and I have been double jabbed. We did take a lateral flow test earlier and we will both be lateral flow testing afterwards. We are slightly closer than the 2 meters. So, yeah, good to see you all.
I have a couple of questions very quickly. Do you involve any members of the public in assessing the flower and vegetable trials? Donald is asking.
No, not on the trial site, no.
Not on the trial site. It's a private trial site, eh? Yeah.
And do you mean for actual grading or open to the public?
The question is, do you involve any members of the public in assessing the veg trials and flower trials? In other words,
yeah, so no on both, no on assessment, and we don't open to the public. We do host customers, so customers will come and visit, and we will occasionally host sort of small groups, but we don't have a public open day. No, the press day for our internal work, obviously, and then the press day are the two big openings.
And I've got a question from Vinny here, from Vinny in America. Good morning, Vinny.
Morning.
From Burpee, who wants to know who eats the runner beans?
Everybody that works here.
Yeah.
We stripped the runner beans, I think, just before press day a couple of weeks ago, and had 3 barrow loads, and laid those all out, and they all went in a day. So yeah, there's lots of bean salads and soups going on, I think. But yeah, everything gets picked, obviously, because lots of crops stop if you don't keep picking them, and that just gets put out for staff around the site to use and take away once we're done with it. So yeah, we get some good gluts or particularly when peppers are being picked, we get a huge glut of those. And actually, just going back to the public get involved, no is the answer to that, but we do involve our staff.
Yeah.
So there's certain things the staff get involved in, and they'll be part and parcel of that. Particularly things like chili pepper tasting, because it's not everyone's thing. So there's certain people that are happy to taste the hot chilies and get involved with that. So yeah, staff do. So not just the trial ground staff, but staff in general.
Okay, that's great. Well, that was there were 2 questions, and I think we'll have to move on now. So for me, a big round of applause. Thank you very much for helping us here, for co-hosting. You would have co-hosted us as we were coming to England, but thank you for co-hosting us today online. And we'll move on now to the next part of our programme, and I'm going to move over to Simon, who's going to introduce that.
Thank you very much indeed. Sally. That's great. We're going to move on now to our guest speaker, Professor Dave Goulson, who is Professor of Biology at the University of Sussex. I was introduced to Dave's work by reading one of his books, A Sting in the Tail, which documents the reintroduction of the short-haired bumblebee to the UK. And that really was an eye-opener for me. It really made me think long and hard about, how we garden. More recently, Dave he's recently published, or in the last few weeks, published a book called Silent Earth, which discusses the decline of insect populations globally. And again, I think it's certainly something that I will be reading in the coming months. But today, Dave is going to focus on a jungle garden, looking at the ecology of our home gardens and what we can do to improve their habitat for wildlife. Dave, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Bear with me one moment while I just share my screen. Hopefully now everyone can see a nice picture of a bumblebee. Oh, didn't mean to do that just yet. Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you today about the insect life that can live in a garden, which, as we'll see, is the bulk of biodiversity that can be found in a garden. I've been fascinated by insects all my life. It's a childhood hobby that I've been lucky enough to turn into a career. But actually, I think many people have an early interest in insects. This is my youngest son, Seth, who's very much in his insect phase at the moment. He's completely fascinated by anything small and wriggly that he can catch in his hands, keep in a jam jar on his bedroom windowsill or whatever. And I think a lot of people go through that phase, but sadly they usually grow out of it. And by the time they're teenagers or adults, most people's reaction to insects is fright, and they flap around and try and squash them, which I find really sad. So my sort of mission in life is to try to persuade people to love insects, or at the very least, if that's going a bit far for most people, to respect insects, because they're hugely important. And they're in decline. As most people are probably aware these days, there have been a number of reports about biodiversity collapse generally. And for a long time, that tended to focus mainly on larger, more charismatic creatures than insects, things like tigers or polar bears or the rainforests and so on. But in 2017, there was a study published from Germany, which is what I'm showing you here, which highlighted that insects do seem to be undergoing really rapid declines. So these data, so it's a funny looking chart, but it shows you the daily weight of flying insects caught in malaise traps situated on nature reserves all over Germany. The malaise trap is that funny thing, top right there. And so the German insect fanatics have put these traps out since the late 1980s. And the catch fell by 76% between 1989 and 2016. So seemingly 3/4 of the flying insects in Germany disappeared. There's a lot of evidence that this isn't just confined to Germany, that this is a general phenomenon, certainly also happening in the UK and North America, and probably everywhere. And this should really worry us because as I've already said, insects are really important. And this was put quite nicely by an American biologist, E.O. Wilson, who I won't read his whole quote out, but he basically said if people were to disappear, the planet would do quite nicely without us. But that if insects were to vanish somehow, the environment would collapse into chaos, as he put it. Which sounds very dramatic, but I think most people who know anything about insects and what they do would agree. And I want to explain why insects are so important. Well, firstly, they make up the bulk of life on Earth. We've so far named about 1.5 million species of plant and animal, of which 1.1 million are different types of insects. So they are the bulk of global biodiversity. But they're also food for a huge number of other creatures, like these gorgeous bee eaters and many other birds, and bats, and lots of amphibians and reptiles and freshwater fish like trout and salmon. They all depend upon insects. So if the insects disappear, then so too will these other creatures. But they're not just food. They do lots and lots of other really important things. They control the pests in our vegetables and flower beds and our arable fields. They recycle dung, dead bodies, dead trees, leaves, and all sorts of things. They help to keep the soil healthy. They transport seeds around. You name it, they do it. And that's why E.O. Wilson said that the environment would collapse without them, because without these vital processes, things simply wouldn't work. Of course, the one thing that insects do, which is widely appreciated, is they pollinate. An enormous number of different species pollinate. People tend to think of bees as the main pollinators, and they are very important pollinators. But they're helped out by butterflies and moths and hoverflies and lots of other different species of flies and wasps and beetles and so on, all busy visiting flowers. It's estimated that just in the UK, there are about 6,000 species of insect involved in pollination. And between them, they pollinate the bulk of the world's plant species. So 87% of all known plant species need pollinating by some kind of animal. And in the tropics, that might be a hummingbird or a bat. But in most of the world, and in Europe, it's exclusively done by one type or other of insect. And of course, this is highly relevant to us as well, because we humans need insects to pollinate our crops. 3/4 of all the crops we grow in the world benefit from insect pollination. So everything from apples and strawberries and raspberries to courgettes and pumpkins, tomatoes, chili peppers, most fruit and veg, even things like coffee and chocolate depend upon insect pollination. So, I mean, the horrible, harsh truth is that people would starve if we didn't have insect pollinators. So we should be looking after them. So this we've grown used to our supermarket shelves being kind of replete with this amazing array of fruits and veg, but they wouldn't look so good if we didn't have insects. So what can we do? It's all a bit doom and gloom. Sorry to bring you down this afternoon, but there is good news here, which is that we can all do something. I mean, and particularly people professionally involved in growing plants. Because insects live all around us. They live in our gardens and our parks. And most of them haven't yet gone extinct. They could recover really quickly if we just provide them with suitable habitat, with food and somewhere peaceful where they're not going to get sprayed with insecticide and so on. So we can all get involved. And I think that's a really kind of empowering aspect of this. Much more so than many big environmental issues, where you feel quite helpless. So one of the obvious things to come to the relevance of my talk to this meeting today is that we could make our gardens much more wildlife friendly by growing the right kinds of plants and by managing them in the right kinds of ways. And this has huge potential to really contribute to supporting biodiversity. Just in the UK, where I know the figures, we have about 22 million private gardens covering an area. It's about 400,000 hectares, which is a bigger area than all of our nature reserves put together. And just imagine, this is my sort of crazy dream, is that all of those gardens were jammed full of insect-friendly flowers and pesticide-free, maybe with some wildflowers, things I'm going to come back to in a minute. And not just that, but if not only the gardens, but also the parks, the cemeteries, the road verges, the roundabouts were also being managed for wildlife. And that's a kind of national network or an international network of insect-friendly habitat, which would really, really help. So I'm quite excited about this, not least because it's something that's actually happening. It's not just a crazy fantasy. There are lots of people already doing this. And so it's not an entirely unrealistic dream. So I've written books about this, The Garden Jungle, and more recently Gardening for Bumblebees, which are both about how to, the latter being more of a practical guide to encouraging pollinators and other insects in your garden or in urban areas. So gardening, as we'll see again in a second, can be a very positive thing for biodiversity, but it isn't necessarily. It really, really depends how you do it. So we think of gardening as a green activity, don't we? I mean, what could be more green than growing lovely flowers and vegetables and so on? But it isn't necessarily. So if someone's idea of gardening is to drive at the weekend to an out-of-town garden centre and get a big trolley and fill it up with plants that have been grown in a peat-based compost in a disposable plastic pot, and then they buy some herbicide and some fertilizer and some bug spray and pile it all in their trolley and drive it home. Well, actually, the manufacture, the creation of all those goods has a really significant negative impact on the environment. And you're not necessarily helping nature by buying those things, quite the opposite, in fact. And taken to its worst extreme, gardens can be desperately poor places for wildlife. And one of the sort of frustrations I find these days is that while some people are making their gardens wilder and embracing the idea of encouraging wildlife in their gardens, others are going in the opposite direction. And this is actually a garden with plastic grass laid. You can even buy plastic wisteria, I noticed online the other day, to pin to your house. Terribly depressing that anyone would want to, and you know, of course, it does flower for 12 months of the year. But anyway, I hope you agree with me that this is desperately sad, and that we really should be trying to discourage this kind of thing. I wish it was socially taboo to put plastic grass all over your garden. But at the other end of this spectrum, gardens can be amazingly biodiverse, and there's a really nice example of this from urban Leicester. A lady called Jenny Owen, who had a small garden near the city centre in Leicester, which is not the most spectacularly beautiful city in Britain. It's certainly not known for its wildlife, particularly. Sorry, Leicester residents, if any of them, anything against Leicester at all. Anyway, Jenny Owen spent 35 years cataloguing every species of animal and plant she could find in her little garden. And the grand total she came up with was 2,673 different species, which is just extraordinary. Now, of those, 1,997 were different types of insects. So most of it most of that diversity is insects. But isn't that, those numbers, just to me, when I read them first, I thought, well, this is amazing. These are the sorts of numbers you might expect from a rainforest, and yet they're in an urban garden. So how do you make your garden support so many different species? Well, of course, the first thing to think about is what plants to grow. And you're immediately faced with a bewildering choice. Now, I read one estimate recently. I still struggle to believe it. Perhaps someone here will know how accurate it is, but that there are something in the region of 70,000 different varieties of about 14,000 plant species available just in UK garden centres. Whatever the true figure, it's certainly very large. And if you go to a big garden centre, you are overwhelmed with choice these days. If you want to know which ones are best for wildlife, it's not always easy to know. There is a lot of advice out there, but it's not always 100% reliable or based on evidence. So a few quick sort of pointers to help with flower choice. Firstly, it's generally best, if you want to encourage wildlife, to avoid double varieties of plants. And we all know that many of the cultivars available of many popular garden plants are available as both singles and double varieties. And the doubles tend to be much less attractive to insects either because the petals, the extra petals, prevent the insect from getting into the flower, or often because those extra petals are actually the stamens, the pollen producing part of the flower, that have mutated instead of being stamens, into petals. So there's less pollen anyway. So there's a simple kind of rule of thumb, but it still leaves an awful lot of plants to choose from. And there are many lists out there, including the RHS's list of plants for pollinators, which are not bad, and they're pretty broadly accurate, but it's still hard to know where to start, which are really the absolute best plants to choose from all those that are available. So to try to come up with some kind of answer to that, I got involved in a field trial with Rosie Rowlins, who runs a nursery called Rosie Bee Nursery in Oxfordshire in the UK, specializes in insect-friendly, pollinator-friendly plants, all grown organically. Rosie ran a trial. I'm not trying to claim that this is the definitive trial on which plants are best for pollinators. There's certainly a huge amount of scope for more work to assess which are the best varieties of different plant species and so on. But anyway, Rosie looked at 111 different varieties of plants, all of which are broadly regarded as good for pollinators. And these were the winners. So she counted insect visits to these 111 varieties for 5 years to see which attracted most bees, butterflies, beetles, and so on. And those, to my surprise, were the ones that came out absolutely top. I would never have guessed that those would be the winners, particularly number 1, which is Calaminta nepeta, which is a plant you don't often see grown in gardens, but clearly bees love it if you do. Followed by Helenium and one of the hardy geraniums, Rosanne. If you want, I'm not going to talk you through the whole paper, obviously, that would be very dull. If you want to look, though, it's available online. It's open access, so anyone can read it. And it's pretty easy to understand, although it's a kind of, published in a scientific journal. I'll just tell you one other thing that Rosie discovered in her work, which is that overall, native wildflowers tended to attract more natives and near natives, which really means European plants, tended to attract more insects than more exotic plants. And this isn't really surprising because obviously native plants will have co-evolved with our native insects over thousands or millions of years. And so we shouldn't be surprised that our native insects quite like them. But it does mean that if we can squeeze in native plants into our gardens, into our plantings, then that will really help insects. And things like marjoram, Viper's bugloss here, and greater knapweed, they all look actually gorgeous in a herbaceous flower bed, I think anyway. I've got them in my garden. Which leads me to a related point, which is that I think we should try to reevaluate what we think of as weeds. Gardeners spend an awful lot of time trying to get rid of some plant species and replace them with others. And yet some of the plants we're trying to get rid of are really rather beautiful if you stop to think about it. We've all been sort of taught to believe that these are plants that you're basically a bad gardener if these are growing in your garden. But they're really quite pretty, aren't they? I'd say they're beautiful. And insects really like them. So maybe we should encourage people to be a little bit more tolerant of the native plants that spring up voluntarily in our gardens. A couple of other areas, not perhaps so directly relevant to today's meeting, but that are worth bearing in mind if you're discussing gardening for wildlife. Firstly, if we could reduce mowing frequency, that has huge benefits for biodiversity and also for capturing carbon and for drought resilience in lawns and multiple other reasons why it's better to not mow so much. Of course, mowing also uses petrol typically. This is my lawn, and that's what it looks like when I don't mow. Just bursts into flower. I never planted any flowers in it. They're just there waiting to spring up if I leave the mower in the shed. Relating to which, of course, there are also lots of mown areas like that in urban areas, road verges, roundabouts, parks, and so on, which could be planted with wildflowers. As here, this is an example from Stirling in Scotland, where a local group of volunteers plant wildflowers on any bit of land they can get permission to sow wildflowers on, usually council-owned land. This is road verge. There's a roundabout. They've also planted flowers on the edge of a rugby pitch, in a primary school field, and even in a prison yard. More than 90 patches in Stirling, and it's quite a small city. Just imagine if every roundabout in Europe looked like that. I think that would be amazing. Unfortunately, all too common a sight in many of Europe's urban areas is this kind of thing. Most of you, I'm sure, will immediately recognize this. This is just a little patch of what was probably mostly grass. Maybe it might have been a few flowers in there. But now it's dead because it's been sprayed with herbicide, probably glyphosate. Many towns employ teams of men with herbicide to drive around, killing anything green that they see growing along the pavements, along the footpaths, in parks, even in children's playgrounds. This is common practice. And aside from being completely unnecessary and sort of pointless environmental vandalism, obviously it's harmful to biodiversity, but also there are risks to human health. There is concern that glyphosate, the most widely used pesticide in the world, it's been classed as a probable carcinogen. Do we really want to be spraying this in our streets and our children's playgrounds, especially for seemingly no real purpose? Wouldn't it be much nicer if that little tree there was surrounded by flowers? I'm a bit radical on this, and you probably all disagree with me, but I would ban pesticides for garden use. I think it's just not necessary. They're so pervasive. We recently did a survey of plants being sold by garden centres as being bee friendly. Many of them use the RHS, in the UK, use the RHS Perfect for Pollinator logo to indicate plants that are attracted to insects. We tested them for pesticides, and nearly 100% of these bee-friendly plants contain pesticides. 75% of them contained insecticides. It seems to me that they're not really truly bee-friendly, and this is something that should be more widely appreciated. Anyway, as I say, I actually, for those of you that are UK residents, I have a petition going on the government website calling for a ban on the use and sale of pesticides by gardeners. The French did this a couple of years ago perfectly successfully, and many other cities around the world have banned urban pesticide use. I think there's no place for these things in our garden. So if you're interested, do find it. Hashtag ban urban pesticides and do sign the petition. Anyway, in my garden, I don't use any pesticides. I grow lots of fruit and veg, and I just rely on these amazing natural enemies to eat any crop pests that turn up, and it seems to work. I never spray my runner beans against black bean aphids or any other pest. And I never really suffer from any major pest problems, and I think any healthy garden is the same. Okay, so just to wrap up, we only have one planet. This is pretty obvious stuff, but it's amazing how careless we are being with this beautiful rock that we live on. And it really worries me that the next generation are going to inherit an impoverished Earth. I find it astonishing, you know, we would all do anything for our children apart from leave them a decent planet to live on. We really need to do things differently. And what better place to start than by looking after the insects that live in our gardens. Okay, that's it from me. I shall stop sharing my screen. Thank you very much for listening. Now, I believe before we do questions, if there are any, that we have a poll that may miraculously pop up on screen. I'm not in charge of that, but I'm hoping something will happen. Oh, there we go. So this is just a very simple one-question quiz. Approximately how many species of bee are there in Europe? I don't know how you answer. Perhaps you can click on the screen. It seems like you can click on the screen. I'll leave you to work out. Is it 20, 200, 2,000 or 20,000 species of bee in Europe? I'm not going to answer it myself, but I guess we need to leave you a few seconds to take a choice and then press the submit button, and then we'll see what the results are. Some technical person here might let us know how the results are going to appear. I've got no idea about this. We shall see. Perhaps they'll just miraculously ping up on screen in a second. Oh, very good. So the most popular response was 2,000, which is absolutely correct. 20,000 is the number of bee species in the world, very roughly, and about 10% of them live in Europe. So delighted to see that so many of you had a pretty good idea of the correct answer there. Nice that people appreciate how many of these different insects there are now. Anyway, that's it from me, but happy to answer questions.
Yeah, now here we are back again. Okay, Dave, thank you very much for that presentation. I've got children and grandchildren on the way, so I'm as worried as you are, I think. And most of us, my generation, perhaps didn't appreciate what was happening when we were children. So it's a very thought-provoking presentation. Yeah, do we have any questions? I've got a question from, no, I've got two questions. People have put them in the chat, which is fine. I've got a question here. I'm going to start with Jack de Vroman. Do you think beekeeping is in competition with the wild insects, he says?
Yeah, it's a good question. And the answer is pretty clear that there is competition between honeybees and wild pollinating insects. So we know that one of the reasons insects are declining is because there aren't enough flowers, and it's almost common sense really that if you have a hive that may have 60 or 70,000 hungry bees in it, and sometimes a beekeeper may have several hives, and that's a lot of mouths to feed, and they take a lot of the pollen and nectar from the surrounding landscape. There is also an issue with diseases which often spread out of hives into wild pollinated populations. So there is an issue, but it's easily managed with a bit of common sense, really. And I think basically one needs to not have too many honeybees and not put them where there are very rare native bees or other pollinating insects. It just requires a little bit of compromise, really.
Yeah. And I have a question from Diane. Diane is from our partner organization in America, from the All America Selections. Good morning, Diane. And she's asking, so many people are scared of bees. How do we re-educate them?
Yeah, it's really sad, isn't it? I mean, I mentioned at the beginning that it's true. Many people are, their reaction to anything that buzzes is that they think it's going to sting them and they try and kill it, which is terrible, really, because no insect really wants to go out of its way to harm us. It's all about kind of education and familiarity, I think. And part of the problem is that so many people live in urban areas and don't encounter bees terribly often. And if something's unfamiliar, it's more likely to be frightening. One way forward that might help a little bit is to encourage people to have a bee hotel. Which work pretty well in my experience, and they provide homes for solitary bees that like to nest in little tunnels, particularly red mason bees, and they're completely harmless. You can go right up to them, you can get very close to them, they never ever sting. Their sting is so weak it can't break our skin generally. And my kids love watching the bees coming and going from the bee hotel. And I think if you get the chance to see them close up and watch them, you soon realize that they're harmless. But how do we get everyone to get that experience? That's a real challenge.
How do we get to love them? There's some questions coming in, but we are really going out of time. So I'm sorry for the other two people that have asked a question, but we really do have to move on. Otherwise we won't finish the program, but we'll get those questions to you, and maybe we can provide answers when we send out the report of this conference, and we'll give everybody a link as well to rewatch it. So thank you everybody, thank you Dave from everybody for this presentation. We're going to move to the final part now of our conference. So I'm going to move back again to Simon, and he's going to introduce the last part. So do bear with us and stay with us. We've just got one more beautiful piece of film to show you. Simon.
Thank you, Sally. We're now going to turn our attention to the year of the calendula and the trial that we held at Hyde Hall. There was a duplicate of this trial which was grown at Harlow Carr. The same cultivars, but obviously very different conditions, different soil types. But I'd say overall, generally, the results were similar. There were some differences, and because we're short of time, we won't go into that now. But in the lengthy version of this film, I do comment on the differences between the Harlow Carr and the Hyde Hall trial. So please, if you get a chance, watch that for a little bit more detail. A couple of things. Firstly, we really do need to think about the year of campaign and how we deal with that in the future beyond 2023. So I would just ask all of you to think whether we should repeat some of the successful year of campaigns of the past, whether we should come up with something new, different, a new concept, because we do need to start planning for 2024. And really, we do need to think about planning further ahead than 3 years, because by tying people in, letting botanic gardens and display gardens know what is coming along down the track, then that will help them to plan as well as for us to plan. So back to the calendula trial at Hyde Hall, a very big thank you to Peter Seabrook and to Molly Kreisman. Molly, who actually grew the trial, and Peter, who organised it. Their support was invaluable and made it all possible. The result will be self-evident in the film. Another big thank you to Rob Brett, the curator, and Ian LeGros, the site manager, the site overall site manager at Hyde Hall, for their support and interest. They made all this possible. So really, without further ado, I would like to get the film started. Peter Seabrook will be available for questions afterwards. So please get your questions ready. I know Peter will be very anxious to come back with some responses if time allows. Well, we will make time allow, won't we, Sally? So over to the film.
Welcome to Floral Fantasia, and for those of you who weren't watching the Rudbeckia trial for Fleuroselect in 2020, well then I think we have a very special treat for you. The gardens here are planted really to demonstrate the benefit of seasonal colour, and even in small gardens just how much impact you can put in. For those of you who were with us, well then, a very warm welcome back to the Royal Horticultural Society's garden at Hyde Hall in Essex. This year, Fleuroselect have commissioned us to trial calendulas. It is, after all, their year of the calendula 2021. And we have close on 80 different cultivars. And as the visitors come through the gate, you know, they're all saying, goodness, I didn't know there were that many different calendulas, all from a simple packet of seed. And I can tell you it's quite comfortable sitting here. Perhaps I should have this big wooden chair on my back step and sit there and just watch the world go by as I slip into retirement. But no, I must stir these idle bones and show you the Fleuroselect year of the calendula trial and what magnificent flowers there are. We are asking visitors and there can be 4,000 or 5,000 on a good day, to select the cultivar that they like best. And at the end of the season we'll count all those votes. It'll be quite a game, and there'll be a People's Choice Award. But where do you start when we've some 80 different cultivars to look at? Well, probably here with Calendula officinalis art shades. This one has come from Bertrand, but it's a very popular mixture, and it has been sown here direct, as all the others were, in April. We didn't really thin because we wanted to see what sort of colour range there is in the mixtures. That's a bit risky, because when you leave calendula really thick and close together, there's a tendency for the disease mildew to spread. If they're thinned out, you get bigger, stronger plants. But this is a perfect position to start to show you how the different cultivars vary. Art shades, tall, stems long enough to cut, and of course they last quite well in water. But if I move just up one, we have Calendula bonbon apricot, and just look how compact and neat and uniform they are. You know, from those of us with a seedsman's background, we're looking for rogues, things that are out of character, and when it comes to this Benari strain, they are quite remarkable. And not just the bonbon apricot, we've got here bonbon light yellow, not quite so strong as the apricot, and then the traditional bright orange, bonbon orange, and a little taller and not quite as compact as the other three. Then there is bonbon yellow. Now, where there are varieties that grow quite tall, and this buff pygmy with the purple reverse to the petals from Taki, I think it was originally one of the Sahin strains, you will see that where they flop, they break again from the base. And if you then just cut those older stems back, the whole plant will completely rejuvenate. The purple or bronzy kind of reverse to the petals is seen in a number of these shades, as it is here with Bullseye. Really tall. You have to be careful when we're deadheading, because they can shatter a bit. Well, we've looked at the different heights, the shapes of the plants, and some of the shades of colour that are available. And now I'd like to look at the actual petal form, because here the Calendula calexis orange from Van Hemert, actually stocked by Thompson and Morgan, the petals are rounded, and so you have a sort of quilled shape, which is really quite attractive. It'll take a bit of selection to hold that petal form, and it's not just in the orange. We've got Calexis yellow, and again the flowers quite nicely quilled. Pretty good habit, especially on the yellow cultivar. But the variety which is really getting the votes currently is this Candyman orange. I'm not sure whether it is the colour, the position as people come in the gate and it really hits them between the eyes, or the vigour. I mean, just look at the number of flowers you could cut from a packet of seed. What a fantastic plant that is. And next to it, not as compact as Bonbon, but still very neat and tidy, is Citrus Cocktail from Thompson and Morgan. I think that's quite nicely named, and names are important when it comes to popularity. It's a real cocktail of citrus colours. You know, the more I look at that, the more I like it. It's really fresh. I wouldn't mind drawing the curtains each morning and looking down at a clump of that. Yeah, very good value. But I want to go back to flower shape. My eye has always been caught by these crested kinds. It was some years ago that I saw crested calendula from, I think it was the French company Claus, and they looked almost like gerbera. And I understand that the plant breeder Charles Vallin took some of that stock, and the result are both crown orange and the yellow. He at that time was working for Thompson & Morgan, and the strains still available from them. The problem though is that the more crested you get the flowers, the less seed. It's the old story, similar with unusual colours. You very often find that they're not such prolific seeders. But it's time we paid a little bit more for our packets of seed, so that time could be invested in making these selections and improving those sort of flower shape qualities. It really is a very pretty flower with the dark centre. There's another interesting form, this particular bright yellow variety called Double Farron with green heart. Now it sort of tests you a little bit, but if you look at those two flowers you can see what we mean by green heart. It's quite different to the orange and the very dark scented of some of the other cultivars. And then next to it, the Double Indian Prince, coming from Hemsarden, has a real contrast with the brown to almost deep crimson reverse to the petals, and then the contrasting orange. And just occasionally you'll see a plant with a flower like this one, where there's orange on the outside going into cream at the centre. Just shows you the potential that plant breeders have to introduce more bicolours into the future. I spoke about the cost of seed, and perhaps I could just show you. If you have a large single flowered calendula, then it sets a lot of seed. If you look at that head, you can see around the outer edge especially there's some really big seeds, and those are the ones that have the best germination. If you go to the more double and the highly bred, for example the crest kinds, then they don't set any seed on the crest, and you can see it's all sterile around the base, and you've just got a few smaller seeds in the centre. And that's why the crested and the double types will cost more, because you won't get anywhere near the seed when you grow them on a field scale. The big seed germinates very well, and those smaller seeds can be a bit tricky, and that's why if you go for a good colour and you sow the seed, you won't get the vigour that you get with the singles. There are one or two more I must show you, although knowing where to draw the line is difficult. But this cultivar called Neon has an attractive incurving flower, so it shows much more of that dark reverse, and it will make a pretty good cut flower. Calendula Neon, Johnson's seeds. And here the double white Ivory Princess from Tucky. Actually all of the UK seed companies, Sutton's, Thompson & Morgan, Mr Fothergill, all carry something like this, although you'll usually find it under the name Snow Princess. I have to finish somewhere, so why not on the touch ofs? Touch of red buff, touch of red orange, touch of red yellow from Benari. beautifully uniform. I think we might see quite a bit of these in the future. But in closing entirely, I have to refer to a completely different type of calendula called Power Daisy, not raised from seed, but raised from cuttings. I would have thought in California they must flower all the year round. Here, under pretty tough winter conditions, they'll flower from March, April, right the way through to December. And if the winter stays open, well, they'll flower pretty well year round here too. Remember, Power Daisies comes at present in 3 colours. I have something of an apology to make because this top trial is not quite as good as I would like. And I need to explain that all of these beds were full of pansies. And the first sowing of calendula, these top 4 beds, were sown in amongst the pansy at about the 24th of May. And quite honestly, I left the pansies in just a little too long. You can see on the outside edges the pansies are still flowering. Modern varieties are outstanding in the length of time they will flower. But don't worry, because we sowed another calendula trial first week in July, and I think give it 4 weeks time, that long bed with the later sowing is going to be absolutely fantastic. You'll need to come back and have a look for yourself if you're anywhere near Floral Fantasia at the Royal Horticultural Society's gardens at Hyde Hall in Essex.
Hello everybody, thank you Peter, and welcome back to everybody. I hope you enjoyed that film. I certainly did. I really enjoyed your professional view of calendulas, Peter. And has anybody got a question for Peter after showing us this? Maybe you could comment with us, Peter. You're with us today. What can you tell us extra that you didn't tell us in the film? Oh, you've brought something with you.
I just wish we could share the sheer joy of people coming through the gate, you know, as they catch their breath and say, goodness, look at that. They didn't know that there were that many colours. Why don't we have in every country gardens which are full of seasonal colour? I mean, I was interested in Dave especially. You notice how the bees were in all our calendulas everywhere. I'm surrounded at Hyde Hall by wildflower meadows, and they drive me balmy with the seed flowing in from milk thistles. And if I'm really counting bees and pollinating insects, where are they? They're on the triploid marigolds, they're on the zinnias, they're on the calendula. The main thing, I think, is that we want as people to stop concreting their gardens. They need to be planting. I don't mind what it is, but plant something. The bees and the insects need moisture. And as soon as we garden and add moisture, they come alive. So please, all of you people in the seed trade, don't be afraid to charge a little extra for your seeds, and let us spend that money on showing the population just how wonderful life can be, and how much pleasure you can get from a simple packet of seed.
Yeah, that was yeah, thank you for that Peter. Is there anybody got a question? Anybody else got a question? Yeah, we have a comment that the trial was very good. Thank you very much for that comment. Is anybody else got a question to ask? Oh, I've got Simon wants to know if Candyman Orange is still the most popular variety in the trial, Peter. The Candyman Orange.
I have an 86-year-old sitting in her kitchen counting the boats. And I don't know, but by tomorrow I may know what is the most popular for the month of August, and we're going to keep counting it. So we will let you know, Sally.
Okay. So if we don't have any more questions, nobody's put their hand up, nobody's asking. Well, it must have been all very clear then, Peter, but it actually was all very clear because you explained it beautifully to us. So that's the end of our major presentations today. I'm just going to call in Simon again to say goodbye. Simon, my co-host there. There you are.
Yep, I'm here, Sally. I'm here. Yes.
So what can
we've got to talk about next year, haven't we, Sally? I think
next year, Simon. Yes, please carry on.
Right. Well, we've got a slide here, which I think I should be able to show. If I can just share the screen again. Yeah. Can everyone see?
Yep. Yes, it's up. It's up, Simon. We can see it. You have to unmute yourself. You've muted yourself.
Okay. Right.
There you go.
Right. There we are. Okay. So next year, let's all get prepared and keep our fingers crossed, COVID permitting. We will hopefully meet up in Bavaria. So I'm really excited about this in the Munich area, 31st of August to the 1st of September. Our hosts are going to be Grain Vaults, the team at Grain Vaults. So thank you to them for starting to organize this. Various visits. We're going to the Weinsteffen University perennial trials. And I think it will be a fabulous few days down there in southern Germany. And I believe they have some beer to drink down there as well. So I'm sure that it will be a lot of good fellowship as well as lots of good flowers. So, Sally, I think that's pretty much it. Let's hope that we can all make it down to southern Germany next year. I'm definitely looking forward to it. So let's keep our fingers crossed and keep getting our boosters.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions. Sally, over to you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you to all our presenters today, the people that provided the films, to Mr. Fothergills, to Dave, to Peter, of course, at the end. So let's all say, I'm waving to everybody. I think if you all wave back to me, then let's feel that we're exactly all together, even if we couldn't be here in person. Good night, everybody. Goodbye. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks for watching.